the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge tonight's game will take place on the original territories of the peoples of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot First Nation tribes of Siksika, the Piikani, the Gena, the Stoney Nakoda First Nation tribes of Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation. This territory is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. As an organization, Calgary Sports and Entertainment is proud to continue our commitment to learn from and partner with our Indigenous communities.
I thought that was a ceremony.
Good morning, fellas. The
Morning.
wise men, the guys I look up to. Good morning. I fed my horses this morning. It was pretty cold. Little ponies were chilly this morning. But yeah, the ceremony. Well, I guess it was a celebration. It wasn't a ceremony. It was a celebration. It was long overdue. I'm glad the Flames reached out to me January 16th, and that was the end result, what you saw on Hockey Night in Canada. So I thought it went very well.
Well, it was really good. It was really well done. I was at that game, and I thought it was just really well done.
Yeah, the components, I think, just to give you a little, I could talk hours about it, but the background on it, the details, there's a whole story to the territories and to the traditional lands. And the cool part is, I talked a little bit about it, is the traditional games. Traditional games have been happening for thousands of years in our communities, in our Indigenous communities, and what they do is bring people together. They gather, they pay respect, they show their culture, they show their pride. In our culture, they had traditional horse games, they had traditional hand games, they had traditional games to where people gathered and they'd settle disputes or settle differences. And this has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. So the way I see it, that was like a more traditional game that brought everybody together, because everybody under one dome, the Saddle Dome, Hockey Night in Canada, is different cultures.
Brent, I really like what you just said about tradition, games, and you mentioned some of the games are played where they're settling differences. And they're pretty aggressive, but they're done in a way that breeds respect in the end. And I think rugby is one of those sports where very few sports do you try to maim each other, but the idea of what comes out of that. Now, I've got a story that I want to share with you, Brent, and I don't know if you're aware of it, but the 1960 Olympics in Mexico, there was a Team Canada had a sports psychologist that they were talking about perspective and refocusing under stress. And they used a story of an African village and a game they played in the center of the village, which was on a wide open space, where the males on each side of the village would play a game of murder ball and literally maim each other. It was physicality like you couldn't believe. But at the end of the game, and I always related this to rugby, they went to the tallest tree in the village, and the captains put their arms on the trunk as high as they could. All the players put their hands on one another's shoulder, and they imagined the negative emotions and feelings going up through the trunk, through the branches. And the cue word that the Canadian Olympic team that year had for refocusing was tree it. So when you got uptight, you got wound up, you got upset in game situations, that story connected. And I thought of it immediately when you said the different kinds of games. Hockey's just another game. There's all
Yeah,
kinds of North American sports, but the idea of why you play the game and what you come out of it for, and right now your ability to have a celebration and appreciate that. I don't care if it's the Flames game, they're striving to be better than the other side, but not lose sight of the big picture.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Wally. I was just amazed by the way everybody came together, and it was really emotional because as a BIPOC person of color, minority to Canada, and being traditionally the first people here in Canada, it was important to share our story in a graceful, kind, respectful way to show the strength and resilience of our people, but also to learn. I think I was really blessed to travel in a traditional game that I traveled to about 3 weeks ago to a month ago was in just outside of Mexico, on the other side of Phoenix, a place called Sells, Arizona, Odana Otham Nation. And when I was there for their celebrations, they had a game that was almost identical to hockey. They were dressed in their traditional regalia, their buns. At that time, the females were all playing. They had wood sticks. They looked like mesquite sticks. They're lawn hockey sticks, and they were curved. They had traditional protocols there, elders, and only the women were allowed on the. It was like a outdoor arena, like an outdoor football field, and the game was called Taka. But that brought the whole community together, and the oldest elder was the ref, and they dropped the puck. The puck was made out of mesquite and tied with leather. And Taka was a game that brought people together, inspired people, and taught values. And that game's been happening for thousands of years. And I swear to God, it looked just like hockey. And also, the Dene from up north in Yukon, they called me and heard what I was doing. And they have a similar game to hockey in Delaney, but they had moccasins, and they had leather moccasins, and they put blades on they had rawhide and blades. So this is going back hundreds of years. We're not claiming that hockey come from us. I'm not claiming that. All I'm saying is traditional games brought people together to celebrate sport, to celebrate cultures.
Your mic, Wally.
Wally, your mic's off.
Is that the first time you've heard of and seen that game?
That's the first time I've ever watched Thaka. Thaka is from Odana Otham, which is the second biggest First Nation in the U.S. They have Navajo Nation is the biggest First Nation, and then Odana Otham is the second biggest. In fact, that game is so ingrained into their culture. The women are so good when other nations ask them, challenge them to play. They said, "Oh, you guys aren't that good. We'll send our women's team to beat your men's team." That's how good they are.
Yeah.
I'll send you guys pictures and videos of it. It's truly amazing to see the similarities and the way they get behind their game. And like I said, that game's been around hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Brent, do you have a video of the celebration?
Yeah, actually I do. I have they're on my socials on Facebook, DH Ranch, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Is it possible you could share it with me so I can include it and share it out to our audience? Because
Yeah,
I'm going to edit this part of the talk out. I had a question about the celebration. One of the things that struck me was you had a number of, was it tribes represented there from Alberta?
yeah, they're referred to as tribes or nations. So, yeah, long before Canada was here, there's First Nations that were here that occupied lands, and we had the Blackfoot Confederacy, which consists of the Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani First Nations, and we also had the Stoney Nakoda, which is Good Stoney, Bearspaw, and Chiniki. And we had Tsuut'ina Nation, where I come from. And then they also have recognized the Métis Nation of Region 3. So it was very important to show, not to showcase, but to pay respects to our culture. And I tell you, trying to bring that many people together, it took a committee and it took a working group. I will not take credit for all of it. It's the people that you bring in that work together. My job was just to help and assist and have oversight and build that partnership with the Flames. But I really, truly thankful to the working committee. It just goes to show we work together. If we listen to everybody's opinion and they all have a valued opinion, together everybody can achieve more. Because I've been a part of a lot of losing teams and I've been a part of a lot of winning teams. I think when we work together, we accomplish more.
Well, Brent, before you came on, I think a lot of the time was spent, and Rick in particular, talking about hockey and teams being more successful than others. And the idea of when you play a game, you have to earn a role, but you also have to be respected as being a part of the team and feel a part of the team. And you use the acronym TEAM, together everyone achieves more. It's so true. Yet coaches in hockey seem to forget about that and focus on the outcome.
Yeah.
By shortening the bench, players being given roles that aren't earned, and a lot of players not getting ice time to develop and feeling less valuable to the team. So what you're saying about your celebration, it brought a lot of people together that I'm sure had differences historically over time, territorial, challenging differences.
Yeah.
Generations of differences. And to bring that group together today, at this time, for the purpose of where we are at as a society, is huge. I mean, it's the time now to really make games achieve the results we want with the perspective of why you play sports, why you play games.
Yeah,
Because it is bigger than the sport or the score clock. It impacts, your whole nation, all nations.
Yeah, not all nations, but like everybody in society as in general. They had two videos. One video was the intro video. They showed Flames highlights, but we really talked about the ambassador role models, or nowadays the kids call them influencers. But they had videos of Rocky Thompson. Man, that the way his fire and the way he plays the game. They had Chris Simon. They also had Theo Fleury scoring his goal, because these are Indigenous players that played for the Flames. Renee Bork, Sandy McCarthy, Scrappin. I mean, it just, my blood was absolutely boiling when I was watching this. And these are inspirational players as First Nation Indigenous players. And it was so good to see. Then there was a second component, which was Southern Alberta Treaty 7 Indigenous players that played either pro or major junior. And like the likes of Wasey Rabbit, drafted, played pro everywhere, and still a role model, coach in Saskatoon. Judd Blackwater still currently playing pro. I think he's almost at 1,000 games in Europe. So many role models that are playing the game still that kind of go unnoticed. But it was important for us to show the kids and show the people that our people have strength and resilience, because I'm just going to segue it into probably the most controversial topic, which is the HDA. But I just chimed in on social media after reading the article. I do support the dream, and I do support the dream plan, but it carefully has to calculate how they do allyship and how they raise awareness. Because as a person of color, a minority, an Indigenous person, it's important for us to see these role models, to see other people succeed, because there's only 6 First Nation players in the NHL right now at the moment. 7 with Carey Price, but he's not active. So it's important that we learn and work together, because hockey is a beautiful game. It brings us all together.
Brent, when you decided to go the distance, becoming a hockey player, what advice would you give young people aspiring to do the same as you? What lessons did you learn moving forward? And what would you say to the public about that?
Well, as an Indigenous hockey player, you have to be able to chase your dreams and go as far as you can. But also at the same time, I had a lot of underlying issues that I never talked about for a long time. And I think if there's some unresolved trauma in your life, it's important to reach out and get some help and deal with it. And I think it's very important that we know the effects of substances, drugs, and alcohol, because I think that was one of the things that hindered my dreams and hindered my outcomes. But I want to be able to talk about it to educate people, because I'll credit hockey for where I am today in sports, but I also want to be able to talk about it openly, that anybody that has mental wellness issues or addiction issues or systematic racism issues, that we have to just learn how to talk about it openly so we can be better people in the end. What are the stats of a NHL player to be made out of Calgary? Is it 0.1? So at the end of the day, very few people, what is there, only 720 jobs in the NHL, if that? So it's very important that we just produce good human beings and good people in sports.
I'm just writing a few notes here. I think Rick, Tom, this group in particular, what Brent said, your job as a parent, as a coach, as a leader, whether you're a politician or a coach, and when you add that all up, it's produce good human beings. I like that, those 3 words. I don't like getting into war and politics, but one of the mantras years ago of the Marines when they were first going to, I'm not sure where it was really to provide goodwill, support in areas that were trying to become more democratic. And the general had 2 words of advice to anybody, and they were do good. And I think it's almost like that's your mission statement. Whatever you do, wherever you go, however you treat people, and how we treat one another. I've always referred to that story coming from a leader of a military organization that is trying to right the ship in their mind, societally and worldwide, and do good is it's really a simple way of saying how can we be better by just trying to do good. You know.
Yeah, I had a very, I guess, a very good learning experience working with the Flames in this past little bit. But I was taught something very beneficial, and I had this feeling when I walked away from this meeting or this traditional ceremony. We had 7 elders of the Treaty 7 territory, consisting of the Blackfoot, Paganis, Siksika, Tsuut'ina, Chiniki, Goodstoney. So there's roughly 7 times 70 years of knowledge, maybe in some cases 80 average age. So there's over 500, 600 years of knowledge there, passed down knowledge for thousands of years. And when they prayed and when they talked about 3 subjects in their native tongue. They talked about strength, resilience, and horse culture. The horse culture, every single nation had their own interpretation of the horse culture and the strength of the horse. And our language is Iskle. The other nations have their own. But I walked out of there with thousands of years of stories and their knowledge, and I felt so like I was ready to go to battle. I wanted to strap on my skates and get on the ice, but that's how jacked up I was. But I think it's important that, you know, as a group, that we define what are we playing for, what do we want to do, and that's why I always say strength and resilience, because when teams come together, somebody has to win, somebody has to lose, but if you're trying your hardest and you're working as a team, you'll be happy with yourself at the end of the day.
Now, you mentioned the elders and the prayers. Did each one say a prayer, or did somebody say a representative prayer?
Well, the way it worked out is the headman, chiefs of every nation, sent in a delegate, and a delegate had a representative of what they call a spiritual leader of every nation, and that's they're the wise men of each nation. So they have the traditional protocols, the stories, the prayers. So I guess just to elaborate a little bit about it, is they prayed in their native tongue, they prayed in their ways, and they just prayed for everybody to come together and everybody to have understanding. But at the end of the day, their interpretation is we move forward together, and that we're all brothers and sisters. And that they explained to me that the game is a powerful game because it brings people together, and it goes back to the original saying of the traditional games, that our people had traditional games that brought people together. So I can't wait to go on the next journey and really edit the videos and talk about it and educate people about it, because I think this is something that needs to be talked about in mainstream society.
Brent, I want to share a story playing with the national team. And I really it's emotional for me because I'm a first generation Canadian. My father, family, my parents were born in the Ukraine, came over to escape the Stalin regime politically to look for a better life in Canada. And we came to Canada, which is your land. And when I grew up in a small town in Saskatchewan, like you, it was a passion, a game you loved, that you played and strived for. When I made the national team, I remember my dad coming to a game. We played the Russians, and it was a game we won, the only one I think we had beaten them
Yeah.
as a player, and that was the original Father Bauer national team. And prior to games, I wanted to share the prayer. I always say a prayer.
Yeah.
And over the years, starting at university, I actually wrote out a prayer which falls along the framework of the Lord's Prayer,
Yeah.
but it's dedicated to sport and the safety of the athletes, the good play of both teams,
Yeah.
and to provide a show that everyone will appreciate and be proud of.
Yeah.
So it was respecting the good of the game, and it was in the form of a prayer where you would say amen. It was the same kind of languaging as the Lord's Prayer in it, but with that kind of languaging in it. So when you play a sport, most coaches get hung up winning. If you
Yeah.
lose, parents get hung up, association gets hung up, it's
Yeah.
ego driven. But
Yeah.
that way, as a player for Father Bauer on the national team, he wanted to go to the Olympics. It was always the Olympics,
Yeah.
and the purpose of the Olympics. What did it symbolize? What did it represent? So I developed that particular prayer, which I think is in keeping with the strength and the resilience and the respect factor of both teams, and the famous basketball coach, I believe Phil Jackson, who said, "Your partner's in the dance. Your
Yeah.
opponent is a partner in the dance." And I always tell coaches that your job and your players, your job is to make the other team better. And their job is to make you better. And that better has nothing to do with the score clock. There will be a result.
Yeah.
But the limits, the effort, the extent to which you compete and possibly even maim yourself,
Yeah.
is what is the driving force behind it. And I believe that the most highly competitive athletes at the highest level, they have more respect for the purpose of the game than we do in minor hockey as kids grow up. We lose sight of the essence and purpose of playing a sport. Like you said, what are you playing for?
Yeah.
And the real reason is, I think it has to be clearly understood. What are you parenting your child to play for? What do you want to accomplish out of this experience? And I'm really glad you came on because it gave me a chance to reinforce the message that I've dedicated the rest of my life to. But amazing stories, and I really believe that the time is right now for sport to have a bigger impact, and the societal thing it's bigger than all of us.
Yeah. Well, I hope out of this conversation, what it's going to create is awareness, one thing, because I've had the opportunity to meet with traditional leaders, and a lot of our history isn't written down. It's passed on traditions orally, taught stories, games that are still happening within our nation. So I feel very blessed to be able to be a part of your conversations and listening to you guys and learning, but also very blessed to be able to learn from my people about the traditional games out there. So if any outcomes come out of this, it's that we're all going to work, learn, and move forward together, because there's many more traditional games in every culture, whether it's Team Korea just kind of reached out to the first our sportsplex, and there's many other traditional cultures that are reaching out to our nations, and there's so much to learn. I'm just open to all the traditional games in New Zealand and Mohawk territory, and whether it's across the pond in Europe. One of my biggest regrets is not taking that opportunity to play for Team Canada when after my 20-year-old year, but I would have that's why I just adore hearing all your guys' stories about Team Canada. I just fascinated with it.
Well, Brent, I wouldn't refer to you as an elder, but the rest of us, I guess in our society, we would be the elders. And I think you and I have talked about it. The role of an elder in terms of meaningful communication and delivering the kind of message we're trying to deliver. Have you got any ideas? Because it's not easy for elders to really be respected to the point of almost brushing off some of the messaging that they have delivered forever.
Yeah, well, I was taught by our old people that they have a role, and that role is to nurture, educate, and be there for support. And I just encourage you guys to keep doing the same thing, to educate, support. And the elders that had the most impact in my community was through strength, resilience, and kindness and respect. And I think that's what people of all colors respect that. I've had elders that are yelling, kicking, and screaming, and it goes back to the horse culture. People are going to fight. Flight means they run, freeze, they're going to freeze, or they're going to fawn. People don't really, they'll respond to it, but they won't respond to it very well. Those four kindness attributes, I just encourage you to keep going in a good way, and really appreciate what you guys are doing for everybody. So thank you. See you, Gus.
Brent, I don't know how much time you got, but I have to ask you this. You had mentioned the horse. You have a business that relates to experiencing the working with horses and the ability to transmit energy and feel emotions, and how horses in your culture you've always been aware of their sensitivity to the surroundings around them, particularly the humans that they're interacting with. And I think it all ties in. So I wouldn't mind you talking about your business out there and what you're doing. And I know you've had Jordan's hockey team out, and you've had, I believe, his school staff out to experience that kind of work.
Yeah.
Tremendous team building opportunity, but an appreciation of the impact of your feelings and affecting those in your area. And I don't care if it's on the bench coaching a hockey team or sitting beside a teammate, but relating it to your work with horses, I'd just like to turn that over to you to elaborate on it.
So Thank you, Wally, for sharing that. But we try not to call it a business. We call it an impact initiative, because if you make impacts and initiatives, then just kind of punch words in our culture. If you call it a business, people think you're out to make money. We're not. We're out to make impact, make initiatives that will carry lessons. So that's what we call it. But we use our ranch, and we use our ranch as a team building work site. But we use our ranch to gather people and teach them about our culture, our heritage, and our traditions. But we use the spirit of the horse, and the horses that we have are the teachers. So we have the horses that teach communication, and the horses will teach us communication. And we have team building workshops for sports teams, managers, athletes, but also workshops. And we teach them about the horse culture, but we also teach them about the tendencies of a horse. And like talked about the four tendencies of the horse: blind spots, communication. And the horse will literally teach you lessons and inspire you to use your communication of voice, because coaching, educating, and teaching is all about body language. 90% of what comes out of your mouth, a horse or a human being are going to remember your body language. So that's the big thing, is how you present your drills, how you present pressure. I don't like to call it applying pressure. We actually call it encouragement. If you show encouragement and you learn how to back off, then your teachers, your coaches, your staff are going to grow. But if you constantly apply pressure or too much pressure, what's going to happen is the teachers, the players, or coaches are going to go into those 4 stages: fight, flight, fright, or freeze, or fawn. So the horses are literally teaching us on how to use our skills. And that's what we do. And we also use traditional practices. At the end of the day, we have 12 different modules. We went to school at Cartier Farms, but we've morphed it into our own traditional Tsuut'ina, Cree, my wife's Cree, so our own cultures. And we have debriefing sessions. And at the end of the day, we use a teepee, and we use a circle, and we also use methods of a grandfather rock, or we use an eagle feather, where we talk about our lessons and we talk about what's bothering us in life, or what's positive. It doesn't matter. And everybody has a valued input or a lesson. Some people cry, some people break down, some people are going through a rough time, some people are joking. But what it does is create that unity where everybody has a voice, everybody has input, and then at the end of the day, we go around and we all handshake or hug each other, and that's building that team unit. So that's what we do at the ranch, and we've had, a couple thousand, 2,000 to 3,000 people come through the ranch, and we only operate seasonal from April to October, and it's about impact initiatives, how we're going to make change. We don't call it a business, because we literally don't make money. We just make enough to survive, and we're about making positive change at the ranch.
Thanks very much, Brent. I really appreciate that. Rick, do you have any questions? Tom, did you want to ask Brent? He's had a pretty amazing hockey career, been there and done that, come full circle, and it's great to see him coming around, making such a difference in the area that he's working in, and it really the good of the game. Any questions, Rick?
No questions, Wally. I'm just an interested learner here. I'm absorbing right now.
Well, Wally, I have a meeting that I have to attend to today, but I just wanted to stop in, say a quick hi to everybody, and I will wish you guys a good day. And I missed you guys at Father Bauer. I wanted to go to the game, but I was watching my niece play on the other side. I heard that was a barn burner, and hopefully we'll catch up at the rink soon and have a coffee. You guys take care. I'm gonna log out.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Brent. Really appreciate it.